Well, all right. Good evening, everyone. This is the nationwide coordinator call on May the 21st, 2026. I'm Lisa Schaefer and I'm hosting this evening. So Cynthia, would you like to go ahead and open us up with a prayer this evening?
Sure. I'd like to take a moment and examine the hard days. And I want to give thanks for every hard day that we survive. Whether it's a death or a stroke or a spouse or an issue, thank you for the hard days because I wouldn't know what a good day was if I didn't have a hard day. And I just take a moment now to examine the time and the things that I learn in the hard days. And that if I learn them very well, I don't have to overcome them the second time. And with that, so be it. Amen.
All right, so be it. Okay. David, if you would like to go ahead and read the Bivens decision.
Yes. Bivens Declaration. This meeting is private, bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner. To eliminate all conflict and false allegations, is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting who is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency or public agency of the federal, state, county, city, or township agencies present? Is there a response to the Bivens Declaration for the first time? Is there a response to the Bivens Declaration for the second time? Is there a response to the Bivens Declaration for the third time? Anyone who is here under false pretenses, anyone who is working for any foreign government, including the territorial United States or municipal United States, anyone who is here being paid or coerced to be here must fully disclose their presence and purpose now or leave the premises. If they subsequently show up as federal witnesses, they are discredited for failure to disclose. I yield back to you.
All right, thank you, David. I appreciate that. Okay, well, I've texted Anna a message, so we'll see if she's going to be able to join us this evening. I guess, are there any questions anybody would like to ask at this point before Anna comes on, that maybe any of us can help you with?
I have a question, may I, Rebecca?
Sure, go ahead, Rebecca.
We had a conversation about the public notary and the recording secretary, and then we know the notary public is the de facto. Is there something special or more that the public notary can do that the international recording secretary can't do?
Well, actually, the International Recording Secretary can witness any document. You have to remember that notaries are just witnesses in many ways, right? Um, but when it comes to the perception of force of law, okay, uh, a uh, public notary who is more or less installed or affirmed by our jural assemblies, unlike the de facto where the public notary is commissioned by the legal societies. Okay, they get theirs from the Bar Association on your state. So the public notaries are there and they actually can, they will notarize deeds, um, like land deeds. They can notarize titles. They're there to notarize wills. Um, and right now, our recording secretaries function as both publishing and recording, right? So eventually, a notary public only functions just as that witness, and then there will be someone in the office who will do the publishing. So there'll be two separate jobs in that way, in terms of the office itself. So the recording secretary, um, is mostly for our paperwork related to our assemblies, and then the public notaries are for paperwork, that is, associated to our court or to court items or lawful items outside of that. Okay? Does that kind of give you a better parameter?
Yeah, that's good. In fact, are you referring to the greater outer that they can do the public notary on as being the air jurisdiction, like international treaties? Which is, I'm
Mm,
asking because I know the Federation uses the public notary. So that was kind of where the
right.
question was coming. Okay.
Yeah, they can notarize those kinds of documents too. Um, Although, in our court, in our state notaries, and depending on what we're looking at in terms of force of law, for Anna being in the air jurisdiction, it makes sense that she's using a public notary, right? Because she's in that international jurisdiction. Within our states, and in our state international jurisdiction, meaning international to all the counties, right? A recording secretary can still notarize all of those documents with no problem. Okay. So they kind of both function. It just really depends on what you're using them for, what jurisdiction you're kind of witnessing that document into. Okay. All right. Anybody else have a question? So you're not waiting for Anna on. All right.
May I?
Sure. Go ahead.
This is Beth on Maine. This
Sure.
is for you, Lisa. Did you ever have any response from the Bureau of Transportation, or whatever the transportation traffic code notices that you sent
Right.
out?
We did not,
You'll
but we did not. But we didn't get any of them back either. Okay. And
That's good.
um, and so, that was kind of our first shot over the bow. Ohio took a step back, and we decided what we needed to do is well establish our recognition by our state of Ohio. So we have a current notice that will be going out 3 times to them, and then we're going to be asking for a face-to-face meeting. So so that's going to hopefully be our start, um, towards actually getting, so to speak, in their face, right? And being able to hash some of these things out face to face with them. And that's what we want. We want to start that conversation, right?
All right. Thank you. I yield.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. Well, I got a little something I'll share with you in the meantime. Um, and this kind of came up a little bit today, so I was doing a little research, and thought I could talk about this maybe until Anna comes in. So on the notice that Anna is having us send, we talked about this, I think, about 3 weeks ago, about the some people said, well, but my state wasn't a state before the Civil War. So I wanted to show you what Anna was talking about when she told you, no, that's okay. You were a state before you even attained statehood. Because here was what they ended up doing was, how each of the states were given a charter or a layout of their state borders prior to the Civil War. So you can see all of the original 13 states Those were done by charter in 1629 through 1732. Now, that's not their statehood date, right? That's not the date that they were accepted into statehood. That's just their date that they were actually carved out and set aside as designated for, at that time, colony, soon to be state. Okay. Then under the Northwest Ordinance, you had the next 6 that were laid out. And that was Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, all in 1787. And then these areas were governed as territories, but eventually they were went ahead and were made states in their territories. So they either started out as colonies or territories, or they were planned expansions of treaties, basically. So Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, 1790 to 1798. And then there was the Louisiana Purchase. So no states were laid out at the time of their acquisition. So they had to kind of carve them up and geographically. And so they first laid out Louisiana in 1804 and Missouri in 1812 and Arkansas in 1819, Iowa in 1838, and Minnesota in 1849. And these were some of the first congressional layouts, and this was U.S. congressional layouts, right? They went on to become more or less territories 1861, 1854 through 1890. Okay, into. I just heard from Anna. She's going to be joining us in a minute. And then we had the Spanish cessions. So they seceded their territory. So it was never laid out by a Continental Congress. It was a foreign territorial until 1821. So Florida was first laid out in 1822. And then Texas was an independent republic already when it joined the Union. So it was 1836 when it got its republic boundaries. And then you get into the Oregon country, and that was joint U.S. and British claim on the territories. Okay, so to be honest, let's be honest, they were British claim, right? So Oregon, 1848, Washington, 1853, and Idaho, 1863. And then you see the Mexican cession, where they seceded their territory to the United States, and that was 1849 through 1861, beginning of the Civil War. So California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. So all of those territories existed, for the most part, prior to the Civil War, with the exception of Alaska and Hawaii, which were then acquired as well, Hawaii being a pre-existing kingdom. So everything was either pre-existing colonies, foreign territories, purchased territories, annexed republics, or then a later territory brought into the. And I just thought this would help you all realize just how long and what that looked like in the expansion, because we don't often really go back and look at the history in this way to be able to see what the treaties, the ordinances, and the expansion plans on for our states really was. But you can see as it goes back, it's almost it becomes much clearer picture in terms of what they had planned and what they were doing with the territories. I'll come down here just a little bit further so you can see the bottom.
May I, Lisa?
Sure.
So what happened with Kentucky? I know it was a county of Virginia. I know it's not even on there.
Right. So Virginia was was a county of Virginia, and then it was split off when they went ahead and they carved out Tennessee, all of this Southwest territory. They more or less set up Kentucky as a commonwealth then at that point.
So can you explain a little bit as far as our assemblies concerned being in a commonwealth? I mean, should we be concerned with any of that, or?
Well, there is some concern with that. And I have to tell you, I'm not that studied up on Commonwealth to really give you a good idea of what you need to be looking for. But Anna's going to be coming on, and I had told her I would probably punt and talk to you all about that so that you could really kind of cement that map into your idea. It's one of the reasons why we don't use dates on seals, because your date of statehood isn't actually the date you became a state, an organic state, right?
Right.
And so we would confuse the issues that are out there if we started saying, well, you know, Ohio was a state in 1787, and they'd be looking at me like I got two heads and, you know, four eyes, right? So, you know, we want to try to avoid that on our seals, keep our seals. And the other thing you need to be looking at in terms of your seals is realizing that some of your state constitution has seal requirements in it. And you might want to look those up. How you design it is going to be up to you, but there are some elements that have to be in your seals that were actually voted on by your people back then. So you may want to consider that within your seals and how you're doing seals. Okay?
Lisa, real quick, I've never seen the stuff you showed. Could you put that in a PDF for us in chat?
Oh, sure.
Thank
Be
you.
happy to. I'll tell you what, I'll save it. And then
I'm from the Northwestern Oregon, and I knew some of that. And I've had people debate with me about the British whole thing. And I thought, okay, that just shows you when they switched from American history to US history. And because I was, yeah, so that was good stuff to see. Thank you.
now you know what I do for fun. I have a really sad life, right?
I do the same thing. Also, Michelle on Arkansas in the chat says Linda on Arkansas is having issues or something.
Okay. We'll check her out. I don't know if Janise, can you help her? What to do? Okay, this is an open document.
I'm not able to find that telephone number. I'm not sure what she's having a hard time with. I can't find her in the waiting room either.
I was having a hard time too, and what I did is I opened Zoom and then I put in the meeting ID in, and it opened the meeting for me.
Oh, okay. I found Linda. So I'll change her now.
This is Doug, may I?
Sure, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, at 29 minutes after the hour, I put USPS spoliation of evidence. It's an article on Govinda Timbul's Substack. You don't have to subscribe in order to read it. It's about how the Postal Service is taking evidence off their website. I yield.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. That's why I always recommend that whenever you're putting something in that you're doing tracking, that as soon as it delivers, that you expand the USP, you go to USPS tracking and expand its tracking path, and then you can use your browser, the three dots top of the browser, to find the print and print the whole screen, because that way you can retain the copy of the actual evidence, and hopefully you'll be able to keep that then, and use that as part of your evidentiary package. But I always recommend that to Ohioans that that they print that off. Don't depend on the USPS for your proof, but print their page off.
Yeah, they also said that if you've got evidence that you sent it and USPS doesn't, then it's considered sent. It's in the article. I always recommend that you go to the post office, pay your postage, leave the envelope open, step to the side, lay out the receipt that you got with the tracking number on it, the sticker with the tracking number on it, and your documents with the tracking number written on them that you did, and then you assemble the whole thing and send it and give it back to. Oh, then you take a picture of all that, and then you assemble it all and give it back to the postal employee.
Yeah, sometimes I actually can get the postal employee to hold it up, smiling face, background, USPS behind them. So
yeah, but I like to have everything that I put in the envelope and the receipt and the envelope all in one photograph. I yield.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's really a self-governing thing. We have to be able to make sure that we remember to do that as we go through. So, have we seen Anna yet? Has she come in? Anybody see her? Janise, have you seen Anna come in?
Seen Anna. No, not yet.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that's good, and that you can kind of understand and see where your state formed first organically. That's your organic state formation. Of course, with those that were kingdoms or republics that were
Anna's
seceded, good. Then you can you'll have to go back and do the research a little bit further on when that republic was formed or when that kingdom was formed. So, in its organic state. She here yet?
Yes, she is here.
Okay. I don't
and
see
I did try to pin her. She's got her full name on there, Anna Von Reitz.
Okay.
And it's a green box with a white A. She's not
Okay. Not seeing her yet, or I'll pin her.
There she is. Okay. Hey, say hi so everybody can see you. You have to unmute, Anna.
Video isn't showing, but it isn't.
Oh, there it
I
is.
can see you.
Okay.
We see you.
Good.
Pin her up.
And here,
I've got her pinned. I'm not sure if you guys see her pinned.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
She's up on the top.
So,
hi, Anna. How are you this evening?
Sorry I'm late, guys. My computer system has completely updated, and there are a bunch of things going on here with the way they ping around and protect me. And so I had to, all on my own, struggle along with trying to get into the meeting.
Well, the good news is you made it
I
all on your
did,
own.
all on my own, without
You're
Shannon, without
you're
Harold,
getting
without
you're get
anybody.
you're getting technology. Woohoo!
Yeah,
All right.
I'll tell
Well,
you
we're glad.
what, I'm grateful for my IT staffers. I really am.
Well, I always tell my mother-in-law, always better late than never. So there you go.
Here
Right?
I am. I've been trying since well, about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Anyway, I'm here. They made
All
me
right.
go through all sorts of hoops, but I'm here.
That's good. You passed the test. So what do you have to update us with this evening, Anna? Let's
100%.
start there.
Sandra Zeifer and Mac Mini.
Yep, we got a live mic.
Well, it's been a wild, wild, wild week out there. The plan for all of the Holy Roman Empire related accounts and things, it was set up so that indigenous nations inherited all the land. So that would have meant that all the land in this country would have been actually owned by the native tribes. And of course, that's what the church wanted to do anyway, because the tribes are their affiliates, right? That's what the Romans called all of the native people, were tribes that paid tribute to Rome, right? So that was a kind of an inside quid pro quo deal between the Roman Catholic Church and its storefront, the UN, and all of the indigenous peoples all over the world, who would then receive back the land of their particular country. There's just there's one little problem, and it is that people have migrated over thousands of years, and who's indigenous to where is not so simple as we might think at first. For example, this past week, it was brought to my attention that those who have been organizing a claim on Germany are not doing it in good faith. And so then I had to step forward and make a claim on all German assets and German lands. And it turns out that that is a much broader claim than anyone would imagine, because if you go back, you find out that practically everyone in Europe is German. And you find out that the vast majority of the land mass, including England and France and Denmark and the countries north of the Baltic, are also all German, just like the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths and the Franks, and all of them were German. And guess what? They're all just different groups or tribes or clans. We call them clans. They're all just different clans of the same people. And our particular haplogroup X, even has relatives in America who are otherwise recognized as Native Americans. And this goes way, way, way far back. And it has recognizable symbols throughout. For example, the Germanic people back at the time of Darius of Persia sent him a message when Persia was about to invade Europe. And they sent him a polite message, but basically told him, go back home. And they sent him 5 arrows. Well, the 5 arrows are symbolic. And then we go to America, we go to the upper Midwest and Great Lakes region in America, and we find the Iroquois League. Well, and what do they have? 5 arrows. And when you start checking the DNA, we have haplogroup X. And what do the Iroquois and the Algonquin and the Cherokee all have? Haplogroup X. They're German. You can't make it up. Okay, the DNA tells the story and the history. And it goes back 30,000 years. So the DNA tells a radically different story than the Bering Land Bridge theory. It's true that many Native people came across the Bering Sea land bridge during the last ice age, but it's also true, obviously true, that those haplogroups came from Europe, Northern Europe, and they just spread westward all the way across. And so this is kind of throwing a wrench in the wheels, right? Because they were all set up to define natives and indigenous as brown and black and yellow and red, and forget the whiteys. And guess what? The whiteys have been here for a very long time. They've been in Europe. They've been in Canada. They've been in the entire eastern half of the United States. And they even have some relatives in Mexico and Mesoamerica. And so I had to point this out to the United Nations. And I also had to make the indigenous claim for the angelic nations, which is another whole bailiwick. And so please try to remember that this is all about inheritance. And so it's inheriting back what should have been always yours, but which was basically you were defrauded out of it by a process of public government claims against private property that was maliciously presumed to be abandoned. Okay, so I had to bring back claims for these major groups of people. And of course, the angelic nations predate everything. And they're scattered all over the world. And so, you know, they're indigenous to wherever they're at. And it's, you know, it's something that it defies the scheme, you know, the actual fact of their being and their unique DNA and their unique characteristics, their unique energetic characteristics, defies any petty definitions, because an angel in China is still an angel. Okay, so anyway, you've got these angelic nations that are really truly international and global in nature, and they live everywhere under all these different you know, guises and races and religious affiliations and everything else. The angelic nations are extremely widespread. And even though there's only about 200,000 of them worldwide at this point, that's still enough of a population to count, to matter. And so I had to make that claim too. Anyway, I'm kind of persona non grata this week. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I think I'll eat a worm. Because, I'm the thorny one that comes forward and says it, right? But if I didn't, we'd be building an entire new world structure, a whole new basis on flawed ground. We'd be building on sand again. And even if the oversight or even if the falsehood was unintentioned, it would still be there, waiting like a time bomb for the moment when somebody woke up and said, hey, wait a minute, this haplogroup stretches all the way across here. And it includes, the Algonquin, the Iroquois, the Cherokee. The Cherokee are still among the most numerous Native Americans. So, you can't just do this and assume that there are no indigenous people in Germany, France, and England, and Denmark, and all these other countries that are inhabited by the same haplogroup and the same haplogroups, I should say. But they are, they're all bell shares. They're all beautiful deers. They're all from the same people that came across the steppes and all the way across the globe. So anyway, I had to step up for the weighties. I had to point out that the Hopi prophecy of the end times, which we're living through right now, includes the black, the red, the white, and the yellow. And each one of these peoples, each one of these races had their appointed task. And they were supposed to do their work and then come back at the end time when the blue star appeared. And by the way, the blue star is in the heavens right now, okay? We're supposed to all come back together. And each nation is supposed to bring forward the results of their research and their work. Well, if there were no white people, why did the Hopi, long, long before Christopher Columbus, establish this prophecy of the end times, which we're now living through, right? Because they established this prophecy probably 3,000 years ago. It's been part of the traditions of the Southwest, waiting to see the blue star in the heavens and everything that's supposed to go forward from there. If there were no white people here, how did they know there would be white people?
Yeah, I studied geology in college and as one of my minors, and we got into a little bit of the paleontology that went with it, and there's a great deal of evidence about the migration of all people European coming over the ice bridge and the land bridges through Alaska, down through Oregon, Wyoming, down into the Western nations and migrating into central part of our country and on over. So, I mean, there is that to say that that migration either didn't happen or that there were no white people on the continent, that would be, I mean, even going back as far as Nordic conquering, in the New England states, there's quite a bit of evidence of the Nordic people being, in and around New England from very, very early on, 900, or even earlier than that. I mean, you go into the Celts, the Celtic culture in Europe, of which my husband Doug, um, we traced his family tree all the way back to about, I think it was somewhere in the 90 BCs, in Celtic culture. And his lineage goes all the way back to the founding of Celtic culture. Um, he has very strong DNA from the founders there in Scotland. So all the way through, one of his great grandmothers being Mary Queen of Scots. So on his mother side of the family. So there's all those evidences that are here that help us in time. So.
Well, yeah, and in terms of white people being on this continent, there's the mound builder civilization, which completely, had the largest agricultural towns on the continent. And they were tall, white, mostly red-haired or dark-haired individuals. And we have recovered their bodies and their DNA and their artifacts scattered across Canada, down through the Great Lakes and through the Middle West, down to Texas and point south. So we know that before the people of the land bridge migration even got here, which was about 12,800 years ago, there were established at the, contemporaneously, there were all of these mound people villages throughout the United States. And there were also, DNA evidence of their interactions with all of the native tribes that have come down through today. So, who's indigenous? My big complaint about the whole indigenous label is, where did I come from if not here? What was
Right.
my mother eating over in Germany, and were all of my little atoms, coming, by some sort of magical process from Germany here? No.
I have to tell you, my father was very proud of me one day when I was in grade school, and they were asking us what our nationality was: white, black, Native American. And I told my dad, I said, I'm really confused, because I said, I thought I was Native American. And he laughed. I said, well, I was born here. Doesn't that make me a native?
Every little electron and proton in your structure came from American soil, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
if that's not indigenous, what is? And so, I think that I don't have a problem with sharing with the native peoples, not at all. But I think maybe we ought to rethink who's native and who's not. And in what sense are we all native to this planet? And in what sense are we all indigenous to the place where we were conceived and born? And I think that this has been kind of latched onto as a reasonable, rational excuse for giving the land away to, the quote unquote indigenous people. but there hasn't been enough work put in to define indigenous, and there hasn't been enough work put in to define and locate the indigenous people who happen to be white. You know, it's kind of a reverse racism. And certainly, you know, I have nothing against Native people. I've worked with the Native people. I recognize their claims. You know, here in this country, we've gotten along perfectly well. The American government, I should say, has gotten along perfectly well with the Native people. The U.S. government, not so much. They're the ones responsible for the reservation system and the Trail of Tears and all that. But the American government was not the one that did that. That was all stuff that was promulgated by British territorial forces. And so once again, we're getting blamed for things that the Brits did. But in any event, the way that we've worked it out is that Native peoples born in this country are dual nationals. They are nationals of their tribe and nationals of their state. And it's worked out just great, you know, as far as that part of it goes. And so I think that there have been some contradictory elements of the entire thing. For example, Natives have never paid federal income taxes, and yet they have been misidentified as citizens of the United States. How does that work? Right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things like that.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's all stand back and keep the peace, and everybody, you know, stick with the truth, whatever the truth is, you know, because if we don't stick with the truth, we're going to wind up with a situation where wherever you let a lie sneak in, there's problems, and there's instability, and there's resentment, and there's injustice, and all those evils follow upon allowing any kind of lie to exist. So we have, you know, just kind of put up the flag and said, hey, wait a minute. We're not going to lie. You know, we're not going to lie about this. It's not that we're trying to take anything from anybody else. It's just a pure fact that we have to admit and deal with, and better to do it now instead of later, because later we'll be down the road and then we'll have to make a whole bunch of corrections.
Right. Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because stability and honesty have been sort of my theme of the week. I've had to speak a lot about it. So it's really, it's that important that we hold those founding principles that we have, right? Because the founding principles that we have, and especially honesty, leads to that stability that we all need in our assemblies.
Right. Stability comes from truth. And, you know, truth, as I said in a recent article, life depends on truth, and truth depends on courage. You have to have the courage to speak the truth, and you have to live by the truth, or you don't have a firm foundation for what you're doing. And then you wind up with a situation like this, where it turns out that all the kings of Europe were made kings by a church that itself was not operating properly. So, you know, when the authority of the Roman Catholic Church is destroyed, which it has been because of historical things coming to light, and then the monarchies, which were established by the church, are destroyed in turn, It's that old principle of fraud. If you start out with a fraud, then when you correct the fraud, you have to go all the way back to where the fraud began. And that takes us back the better part of 2,000 years to the councils of Nicaea.
Right.
So, you know, if the monarchies didn't exist and the church, as we assumed, didn't have the authority that it claimed it had, and in essence did not exist in the form that it was promoting, and if all these corporations were just a self-admitted Ponzi scheme that the Roman Catholic Church thought up, or was thought up by the Knights Templar when they returned from Spain in the 1200s, then there is no authority for what Western Europe has done. And the authority that we have here on this continent is by military conquest, which, thank God, was done well and proper by our forefathers of the Continental Army and the fledgling United States Navy. And so we have a military claim, and we also have an ethnic DNA claim to the land here. So anyway, all these kinds of issues are being brought up, and you know, some of it is 11th hour, but on the other hand, it's something that we have continued to be aware of. Essentially, my ancestors were Tartarians. Most Tartarians have been genocided off the face of the planet at this point. The angelic nations were Tartarian. That's another name that was given to the angelic nations. And that happens to be the home ground where the fallen angels were basing their attacks. They were all coming out of Kazakhstan. And, you know, that's where the 200 were finally nailed down, is that they'd built a new capital for themselves in Astana, Kazakhstan, and they'd built this pyramid structure with a big audience hall with 200 seats. Well, guess what? That's how we finally located all 200 of them. And they've been here causing trouble ever since, well, for thousands of years.
Ever since, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
They've been here for thousands of years, and they've caused trouble the entire time, and that's how we finally nailed them.
We love it when they gather in one spot, right?
Well, and when they give out the names of these supposed religious figures, these were all religious leaders. And when you realize that the last battle is a battle taking place in the jurisdiction of the air, and that Satan is called the prince of the air, right? Then it all makes sense that these 200 fallen angels were actually promoting themselves as religious leaders. And they were set up to, promote the idea of peace without giving peace. This was called the Peace Palace, and it was located in Astana, Kazakhstan. And that, this was the Tartarian homeland. This whole entire sweep across from the borders of Western China, sweeping west, was all, it was under the Tartarians and the angelic nations. And what we have later called Germans, okay? So all this stuff goes back in history. And, you know, as I've explained, it took angels to take out angels. Men were not able to do that. And so now that part of it's been done, and we move on to the next part, which is restoring the earth and healing the people. But this has been, it's been a real challenge. And of course, there are all sorts of little groupies of Satan and company that have benefited and would, you know, have quote unquote sold their souls by contract. And they are intent on doing evil just as well, you know. Taking out the 200 leaders still leaves you with a considerable amount of infrastructure and organizational clout, if you will, that you have to deal with on top of that. So we're in the midst of having to negotiate and make more arrests and deal with the commercial companies, which have been such a thorn in everybody's flesh. And all of this is happening all at once, all around the world, with all sorts of people with good intentions and all sorts of people that are still functioning on their quote unquote wartime instructions. And of course, it's not really a war, but they are acting as if it was a war between good and evil. And they're doing things like, you know, setting arson fires and trying to unleash biowarfare things, you know. It's all these little cells that were all primed up and ready to go are kind of popping off like firecrackers all over this country and Europe, South America. Everybody's being affected by it. And in the midst of all of this insanity, we have Africa standing up, shaking off, and doing amazing things. You know, it's just really it's an inspiration to humanity that Africa is standing up and doing the things that Africa is doing now, because they are standing in their own space and they are, you know, taking their own fate and their own resources in their hands, and they're beginning to really build a sovereign national identity. They're joining together to create their own gold-based currency for all of Africa that would then compete with other major currencies worldwide. So they're doing great and leading all the rest of us back on that journey of self-determination and healing. So I hope you've been enjoying some of the music that's been coming out of Africa for musical meditation purposes. And I hope that you've been making use of this to, you know, join in a sort of a worldwide meditation on peace and healing. Because after what we've been through for the past 300 years, we need peace and healing. It's been an extremely hard time to be alive, frankly. So
Yeah, it's going to be it's interesting here on Ohio. We have a lot of people who are waking up suddenly to the fraud of property tax, to the fraud of income tax, to the fraud of municipal income tax, and to just the no, there's no doubt all of our governors are corrupt, but Ohio seems to have a propensity of corrupt governors along the way, and our current one is no has lived up to the fine tradition of corruption, um, and uh, they're finding out that it's so much um, Medicare, Medicaid fraud. It's in the billions here on Ohio. And the governor knew all about it, looked the other way. And
It's
so
all
now
over.
they've turned on him.
Oh yeah, and it's getting to the point where the rats are throwing the rats to the wolves, and
They are. They are,
but
and it's great to watch. I mean, it's great to watch, and I encourage the Ohio Assembly. I realize a lot of people have given up Facebook, but there's a lot of people there, and it's easy to go out there and just kind of feed the frenzy that's going on with it to say, you know, are you awake? You know, what do you think about this? Here's more. Here's a little bit more of the facts, right?
right. And we all knew about this years ago and have been complaining and rabble rousing and going out and telling the officials and demanding redress. Come join us.
Yep, exactly. So, but I do see that. I don't know if anybody else is seeing that in their states, but Ohio is all of a sudden waking up. And it's really pretty amazing to see this happening all over the state.
Yeah.
So, uh, they are very close to getting on the ballot for their November elections, the abolishment of income tax.
Well,
And then
that's kind
I'm sorry, the abolishment of property tax. And then they're looking at the abolishment of income tax. And this movement is very strong in Ohio. It's got the officials here shaking in their boots.
well, I just wanted to observe to everyone that their ability to tax anybody depends on the false presumption that you're all citizens of the United States, which we
Right.
now know means municipal citizens under the 14th Amendment, which are not. And the 16th Amendment, which was never ratified by the states of the Union and doesn't apply to you. And the 16th Amendment is the source of all of their taxation claims. It's the source of property tax claims. It's the source of franchise tax claims. So when the 16th Amendment and the IRS are done, they will have no enforcement and they will have no ability to claim or enforce any of these taxes within our states against our people. And that is due to happen in less than 90 days when a court case, what is it? It was just on the tip of my tongue. 24/1791 has been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, and they have sealed the findings, but what it does mean is that within 90 days it will be unsealed and it utterly abolishes the IRS. So the IRS is going, and it's just a question of whether or not, number one, will they still be allowed to collect taxes against their own people in this country, or will they have to restrict their collection activities to Puerto Rico or one of the insular states where you have a British Commonwealth government still in control. That's where it should have been. They should have been collecting their taxes and tariffs in Puerto Rico, but they shouldn't have been in the states of the Union misapplying their taxes to our people. And that's kind of the long and short of that one. But we are in the process of getting rid of the IRS entirely. And when we get rid of the IRS, that will take down the 16th Amendment. It will take down their enforcement capability. And that will then and the property taxes, the franchise taxes, and the municipal taxes will all go out the door at the same time because it all hinges on that quote unquote 16th Amendment, which was never ratified by the states of the Union. So those of us in the states of the Union can put a big smile on our faces and know that the IRS scourge is coming to an end. And I've already put the bite on them for correction going back at least 10 years. So not only will they not be able to operate and cause trouble and misapply their agency presumptions against the American people, they'll have to pay us back. And they'll have to return our land that's been confiscated, and our houses that have been confiscated, and our business losses that have been confiscated. They, the IRS, and those who employed the IRS are all on the hook for it.
So Anna, you brought up the 10 years, and there are a lot of people who that they know they're supposed to revocate back 10 years, but they don't exactly understand why. And so the reason is that as an individual, your individual tax liabilities can go back and you can be audited back 7 years. But as a corporation or a business, their IRS code states that they can go back as far as 10 years. And so that's why they go back on that all caps name and back in, is because that is how they leave the loophole. And that's why we go back 10 years in everything. So I hope that's a nice little tidbit of information you all can take back, especially to your recording secretaries, so they know that when they're helping people do the paperwork.
There is nothing stopping you from going back further because it was all based on fraud. It's just that it gets harder, and they're going to contest that because their system only goes back 10 years. They're going to say that there's a statute of limitation, and then you're going to have to argue that fraud was involved and therefore no statute of limitation applies. And that would open up the whole can of wax to go back, as many years as the IRS has been operating in this country illegally.
Right. Okay, well, Anna, are you ready to start taking some questions? Is that all you have for us this week, or?
I'm thinking, is there anything else of great import? Oh, well, just keep it simple, folks. Don't let your assemblies get lost in a whole bunch of standard operating procedures manuals that you don't need, don't want, and isn't part of the American system. We're not here to create military style, bureaucratic bull that we have to cut through, especially with things that are aimed at controlling people from speaking their mind or discussing things. This is oppressive and wrong, and anyone who's doing it needs to be quote unquote clapped in irons because that's the other guys, that's not us. For example, if you can't put your decorum rules down on one page and describe proper etiquette for people at a public meeting, then you need to go home and soak your head.
Right. I often, when I'm going over and with some of the assemblies who've decided they wanted to try to framework the Ohio documents, I always tell them this is a framework. Ohio keeps it very simple and very, very general. And we try to use common sense about the way we go about. We don't need to write down every little whip stitch detail within things, or, describe something. You don't need a handbook for every committee, for goodness sakes. Do your work. Don't worry, know what your committee's about and go do the work.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I mean, it's our handbooks are just kind of a description, a framework, but they're not, you're going to do it this way and this is the only way there is, or you're going to do it this way and and then you're going to do these next 10 steps along with it. No, that's not what we do. So, you know, I agree with you. I'm glad you put the article out about keeping it simple.
Yeah, well, that's the American way. We keep it simple so that, you know, how are you going to enforce all this stuff, and who's going to enforce it, and who's going to play crack the whip and be the leader and determine whether or not, you know, if you show up drunk at a meeting and you're ranting and raving and under the influence, it's pretty damned obvious. You don't need a whole, you know, big file that you don't need the 10 points of the breathalyzer to figure this out, okay? You just have some standards for good behavior at public meetings, and that's really all you're needing. You don't need anything else. Anything else is just going to lead to more bureaucracy and more time and effort and money spent on trying to enforce control. And we're not about control. We're about freedom. Okay, we're about making everybody responsible for themselves and their behavior. But otherwise, we're all about freedom and about, you know, being grown-ups and expressing ourselves politely. And that's really about all it needs to be. Okay?
Right. But we still do need, we have the need to write down a little bit of our processes or the descriptions of things, but we just don't need to write every single bloody detail, right?
Right. Well, you know, if our forefathers had written more down, what we're doing now would be a lot easier. But other than, you know, the names and of, you know, general description of what committees they used as standing committees, we don't have much, because everybody knew what it was to serve on a committee. Everybody just cooperatively got together and got along and got the work done, like a barn raising. Okay.
Yep.
You know, nobody had to have a lot of instruction back then. And I would argue that except for our indoctrination in the European system of bureaucracy, we don't need a whole lot of discussion or description or, you know, written instructions and rules and procedures and processes now.
Right. We just need a bare bones enough that
Right.
we know how to go forward, right?
Right. And, you know, I've seen some instances too of abusive use of, you know, the agenda setting, where people are being restricted in who can put things on the agenda. And that's absolutely verboten. You know, that's not something any American can stand for. You know, there needs to be someone who accepts items for discussion on the agenda. It gets placed on the agenda, it gets called up on the agenda, and it gets discussed. The whole point here is so that people can discuss things of concern to them in their community, right?
Yes.
So if I want to discuss free trade zones in Wisconsin, and I'm a Wisconsin member of the Wisconsin Assembly, then I should be able to put discussion about free trade zones in Wisconsin on the agenda of the assembly and get a hearing for, you know, however many minutes that are, you know, allotted within the you know, purview of and traditions and applications of the Wisconsin Assembly. I should be able to do that. I should be able to bring everybody's attention to it and very briefly present my map showing all the free trade zones in Wisconsin and present my concerns. Because maybe I have concerns about having 10,000 Chinese in these free trade zones operating factories that are competing against our own products. Maybe it kind of bothers me that all these 10,000 Chinese workers in these free trade zones are located at the conjunction of all the major road and communication hubs in my entire state. And maybe it would further kind of concern me that all these 10,000 workers all just happen to be military-aged men. And maybe that should be a real concern for my state assembly, and I should have the right, damn it, to put that item on the assembly agenda and have my 5 minutes of glory so that everybody gets a chance to look at what I'm concerned about. Right?
Right. Right.
So this idea that you're going to have a special little group, and that little group is going to be the one that puts all the items on the agenda is anti-American as hell.
Right.
Anybody in the assembly has a right to bring forward an item for the agenda.
Sure. Sure. On Ohio, we put that under new business.
Right.
And if it goes to further discussion, it goes to old business, or it gets referred to a committee for further research and work. And that's the way we handle that.
Right. Well, and you know, you have an agenda for new business. And you know, obviously, say just using that example, my free trade zone example, that's a big topic. There's a huge amount of stuff there that needs to be researched and needs to be observed. Okay. What are the pros and cons of having a free trade zone? What kind of oversight is applicable to a free trade zone? You know, what kinds of communication and transportation corridors apply to a free trade zone? There's a lot to look up on that, right? So 5 minutes is not sufficient. 5 minutes, a 5-minute presentation in new business isn't sufficient for the whole topic, right? So then you can move, oh, well, I move this topic be moved to the International Business Assembly for research and discussion. You know, you can refer it on right there on the spot and start moving it through the proper channels once it's been brought to the attention of the General Assembly. And then the IBA can come back with recommendations.
Correct.
This is, you know, this is the way that an individual can bring something forward for the attention of the entire IBA, or you know, how about a litigation topic? You know, a individual could come forward and, you know, have a concern about child protective services operations and children going missing in the custody of CPS. Okay, this is a hot topic. This is important. These are lives. These are young lives, vulnerable lives that we're responsible for. Okay.
Right.
Again, it's, you know, it's a topic too big for 5 minutes, but it can be referred on to the litigation committee.
Right. Right. And then referred on, if it needs to be, to other committees for other sides of the work. You know, when you talked about the free trade zone, then, and the concern with the age group of people, that might be a militia, an item that moves on into that part of the security, moves into the militia assembly. And then they do the research on that, and they provide input from the militia side. So, I mean, that's our committees were never meant, and our assemblies necessarily were never meant to be static entities among themselves. They cooperate among each other. We'll have people from militia, from General Assembly on IBA. We'll have, you know, and vice versa on the different assemblies. And then we have cross communication within the committees, because sometimes what we do in committees is going to touch a committee over here. And we have to build that consensus among our committees as well when we go to General Assembly for a vote, right?
Right, exactly. And this is how an individual can use that 5 minutes on the agenda to bring forward a topic and get it assigned to a committee. And we can make use of our committee process to get the work done so that we can take action on these aspects that are being brought forward not just by committees, but also by individuals who just happen to bump up the issue, they bump against the issue in the course of their life. We don't always know what's important out there until somebody shows up on our doorstep and said, hey, did you hear about this? And so that's why individuals have access to the agenda. Limited to a specific amount of time. And here's the other thing. If the General Assembly is really alarmed by a topic that comes up or, really hits a chord, anyone can make a motion to extend the discussion by another 5 minutes, right? And anyone can make the motion to table it until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Or move it into a committee.
Right. So
or another
these are
assembly.
options. These are all options. So everybody needs to be working together on this to make the most effective use of our time and to keep our communication open and free so that we're keeping the information flowing that we need.
Right. But also, I think that also raises the point. What happens a lot of times in our assemblies is someone has an issue like that, maybe that is very personal, and they're bringing their personal problem into the assembly. They're not really looking to move or act on it themselves. They're waiting for someone else to do that, right? And so, we also have to remember that we're self-governing people. And if we're going to get active in an item, and we've got an item that we're bringing to the agenda, we're also maybe bringing some willingness to help research and act on that item.
Sure. Yeah, well, that's one way to draft people into committees.
Yes, exactly.
This is your problem, and here's your committee. Go
Yeah, there you go. Welcome to your committee. So, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you for that. So let's head on into questions. We've got 6 hands raised. So, okay. Mike, go ahead. First up. Mike McGowan. Mike McGowan, going once.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Okay.
Anna, a lot of great things coming out on your blog articles, especially. The courts, as those changes are coming forth, when are we going to see things, or when do you have an expectation of when this will roll out all the way down to our law enforcement officers that'll know that there's multiple jurisdictions that they've had no idea about?
Well, I would suspect within the next 90 days at the very latest. And I've got some information coming out about the police because the law enforcement are, as it turns out, an entirely separate set of corporations. And this is going to blow everybody's mind, but law enforcement has been under the auspices of the municipal government and the quote unquote local governments, and they've been operating under the Vienna Conventions. Wow. So this is another whole insight that is going to have an impact on the way that we interact with the police and LEO community, because their entire power structure and hierarchy is something quite different than anybody assumed it was. And so the banks literally have been hornswoggling a position of enforcement for the purposes of rigging commodities. The central banks, remember I told you central banks were created to Central banks were created to rig commodities. And so the police, the Leos, have been part of that structure. And so we're going to have an entirely new discussion about them and about that, and about how we are going to reestablish the correct relationship of the police forces with the people of this country. So it's somewhat a separate subject, but within about 90 days, it's going to be apparent to everybody that we are in a whole new world.
So how do you see them relaying that information? Are they just going to relay it to the law enforcement officers, or do you see them making it, public that we can see something?
Well, it will be relayed to the police associations, the police service associations, all of which are basically Masonic organizations. And so the Freemasons worldwide will be getting a wake-up call from the national governments on these issues. And so will all of the organizations and agencies that have been employed in these enforcement capacities. So that's going to be a whole shakeup in and of itself. But the general government changes will be taking place in the next 90 days. And so the relief that people have been looking forward to is finally getting here. And the police will be handled as part of that overall transition process. And I can't imagine that they're going to continue to operate as they have been. They're all going to have to be more circumspect in their activities and start looking up their rule books. Like the Treasury Department's Code of Conduct has been flaunted for 2 generations by the Internal Revenue Service. And yet when they work for the Treasury, they're supposed to be following that code of conduct. So there are all sorts of things like that that are coming out of the woodwork now and that are being enforced, and that will have its effect on the local police as well as the agency law enforcement officers.
Awesome.
You
Thank
know,
you,
Anna and Mike, I encourage our Ohioans, not because they have an issue, but before they have an issue, to try to set up and go talk with their law enforcement. Oops.
Yeah, absolutely.
To go and talk to their law enforcement and get to know them. Explain to them what the 10th Amendment is, what the 9th Amendment is. Ask them if they know and if they can explain it to you and what their obligations are, because most of them can't.
Right.
They don't know. And then that gives you the ability to go and talk to them. I've done that with my sheriff that's here, that both the sheriff and his lieutenant deputy who is in charge of where I live. And last week I was on Saturday, we had our all island yard sale, and we were out. It's mostly visiting hour for the islanders, okay? But we were out, perusing around, and my sheriff was parked in one spot, so I pulled over and pulled over next to him. And right away, he had a rider with him who happened to be his wife, and she got out of the car, gave me a great big hug, and he was on the phone. And then when he got out of the car, and there were a few Ohioans that had come over to the island with me to spend the day and go to this yard sale. And they were shocked when this big drink of a sheriff's lieutenant deputy got out of the car and came over and welcomed me home and gathered me up in his arms and gave me a great big bear hug, right? That's kind of the relationship you want to have with your deputy. You want to have with your sheriff. But he understands, and he and I have had discussions about the Ninth and the 10th Amendment and what road pirates are and what the obligations of the sheriff really are. And I've actually had verbal debates with the county sheriff right in front of everybody here. And that's how I met him. And he calls me up, he calls me up to after a meeting and said, "Come here, I need to talk to you." He knows who I am.
Most sheriffs are real happy to find out that they're the top peacekeeping official in their county.
Thrilled to death. He knew that. But he was also thrilled to death that not only did I know that, but that I respected that too. And that's what they need to hear. They need to hear that too. And they need to have you tell them in a way that they're needed. You're not oppositional to them, but that they also have duties to you, the services that they provide to you. As well as, if they needed service, my deputy knows if there was a problem and I'd have his back every second of the way. And that's the relationship you want to develop. And it's in those conversations you have when you're not in trouble with them, when you don't have an issue or a controversy going on with them, that's when you can gain the most ground towards that conversation.
Well, absolutely. And most of them are real happy to hear that it's up to their discretion whether or not the constitutional guarantees are honored. Because a lot of those men have taken an oath to defend the Constitution. And so when it's time to defend the Constitution by respecting the rights of the people, guess what? Those local sheriffs who depend on election and who are there as the final backstop to protecting your constitutional rights, a lot of those guys step up and say, well, hell yes, I'm going to protect the constitutional rights. That's the supreme law of the land.
Exactly.
And last time I looked, we were standing on land.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay, so a lot of those guys want to hear this message. They're happy to hear this message. It gives them more power. It gives them leverage against these agency goons that come tooling into town in their black SUVs and start, harassing and harming the local people. Your sheriff has the power to tell those FBI agents to take a hike. Okay? And
or
they
even
know
the state. Or even the state.
Yeah, and the state troopers. Anybody, it doesn't matter. It could be the RCMP. If they come across our border and start trying to, do something extraterritorial, guess what? It's the sheriff and his deputies that get to tell those red-coated monsters to get back on their horses and hijack it.
And I've had that conversation with him regarding the governor and his goons. So,
you betcha.
Of which he assured me that, and gave me a card with his personal number and said, if his goons show up or he shows up, call me. I'll be happy to throw him in the lake. So I love my sheriff. So, all right.
Yep.
Rocky, go ahead.
How you doing, Anna?
Uh-oh.
Oh, since we got our LRO up and running, and we've been going through a lot of the documents and stuff, and we come across the information on the baby deeds. And on the baby deeds we have right now only has a place for one parent's name. It's either the mother or the father or whatever of that deal. Is it okay to change it to have both parents on the baby deeds or not?
The original one did.
Oh, really?
There are several of them, Rocky, out on the LRO, on the TASL website for baby deeds. There's one for grandparents, single parents, both
well, we've seen
parents.
all those, but even a lot of those, they just have, like a grandparent be one of them, not both of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
or if it's
it's supposed to be whoever can be there. Now, a lot of times, I mean, if it's the dad who's going in to file the deed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or record the deed, I should say. It's because his wife's in the hospital. She can't go.
Or she could be dead. I mean, there's other
Yeah,
reasons why
right,
there would be only one, you know what I'm saying? Because
right.
there could be a
So,
divorce involved. There could be a lot of stuff involved that causes only one of them to record, right?
right, but
But
there
we
can be
would
both.
we would think it would be easier though, because we do have both parents and they both want to sign, and we're doing two different deeds. Well, we'd like to just do one.
Oh, there's no reason why you can't set it up and make it convenient for people. There's
Mhm.
no reason that the mother can't pre-sign, and then when the baby's actually born, the dad can quickly, or the grandmother or the grandfather can quickly fill in the rest of the information
Mhm.
and have it all ready to trot down and record it,
Right.
because getting that on the books before the Brits do is important in
Exactly.
terms of of our situation right now. But soon I think this entire house of cards is going to collapse and change, and they won't be registering babies anymore, because that's part of the filthy and undisclosed practices and the fraud that has been perpetuated on everyone here. So I think that all of that activity is going to be criminalized, and but we still we should claim our babies, okay? We should
But
stand up and say that
yeah,
that little girl, that Laura there, Perkins, that's mine. You
right.
know,
We're
because
we're still going to do baby deeds even when all this other stuff goes up, because we want some kind of record of whose kids is whose. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff.
exactly, and that's why we want to have that on the record, and that's why it should be on the record.
Right.
So everybody should be doing this as a matter of public announcement that this is our brand new family member, and it's the child of Joe and Helen here.
Right.
Also, we should make the effort to put it in the local newspaper under the personals. If they don't,
And we created a public website, and we're going to put stuff like that on there too, so
yeah,
the public can look at it. It'll be like our
yeah,
own newspaper system is what we kind of wrote, but that's one way. Okay, the next thing was about the LRO. I've been having a lot of other states want to use our LRO too. Did we actually host for them too, or is that a problem?
Well, ultimately, they should have their own. I mean,
Right.
we all
Well, that's what I tried
understand
to tell them.
that. But not all of the states have the money and the technical and the equipment and everything right now. So sure, you could host
What it is, I changed our LRO to have 3 different kinds of recording secretaries: an international recording secretary, a state recording secretary, and a county recording secretary. So they would
okay,
get vetted and, done with depending which part you're going to do, in the system. What I'm trying to do with most of the states is I'm trying to get them to get their hardware, and I'll just give them the software and I'll help them set it up. Because I'd rather do that, because I think the states really need to control their own data.
they do, and so the LRO effort has been a training wheels effort to give everybody practice in doing it, and having a secure, safe place to store their records, and it's been a really wonderful thing. But the intention has always been that each state would have its own land recording offices. Each county would have its own recorders,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything would be back where it's supposed to be.
Right.
I mean, but that takes a little time in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the hardware, the software, and the skill.
That's why I know, because if the states can actually get the hardware, the software that I wrote, I'll give it to them free. I don't care about the cost of, because I wrote it myself, so it doesn't matter. I mean, it's got my time in it. And long as they can do that, I can help them get it installed, and they can get their own, LRO up and running. I prefer doing that than actually hosting, even though I could host it for them.
Right.
But
Right.
I believe
Well,
that's where we should be going. But
especially at the county level, because when you're starting out, we've got enough people in most states so that, we could pitch our pennies together and save recording fees and whatnot for a little while and be able to do things, right?
right.
Have some fundraisers. You can get a computer and a server pretty cheap,
Mhm.
But county level, if right now starting out, it'll be harder for the counties.
Right. And the deal is like I said, I already got a road. So, and I looked at hardware, most of the hardware that this would run on could be anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000, and they could have their hardware,
Yeah.
and we can get it
So,
installed.
yeah.
I'm thinking that's what we need to push the county or the states and the counties, to do it.
Yeah, and that's realistically within the grasp of most states, even as it is. And once they all get funded, it's going to be a nothing burger.
What's he talking about?
Mm.
I'm getting some chat questions here. Can I break away for just a second, Rocky?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, about the baby deeds. Yes, you can. You can claim your children and you can claim your grandbabies. Anyone in your family that derived from you, okay? And the reason that you do that is not to intercept them or to debunk their ability to make their own determination, right?
Mhm.
They get to choose whether they're going to be an ASN or not. They get to choose all these things. But when you put that down as a baby deed in our system, it establishes your relationship as the mother or father or grandparent of
Bloody Mary.
this particular person, right?
Okay.
Right.
And they can then use that if they get into a situation down the road where they have to prove what their background and their identity, their nationality was. They can go back and say, well, here's my grandmother who was a Wisconsinite and she claimed me.
Mhm. Yeah, we've done a lot of grandparents and parents. It's whoever's willing to do the baby deed. We find a way of getting it done. You know what I'm saying? Because we need to
Right.
get the kids on the land too, land and soil. But I agree.
Right. Because the thing is that as things are, they
Mhm.
may need that documentation that you're creating for them.
Exactly. Especially when I get
So
older. Yeah.
it's for their sake that you're doing this. You're keeping that door open for them.
Mhm.
You've often heard me say, I'm standing in the door, keeping the door open for you.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with claiming your grown children, claiming your grandbabies, is to keep that door open for them.
We've used it also too for passports, the baby deeds.
Yep.
We're figuring out a way that we can use those to prove that the children, when we get passports for them, that who their nationality is, right?
Right.
That helps in that way too.
And we're at 9 minutes on the conversation,
Can
so
I ask
we
a
need
question
to.
about the recording secretary and the baby deeds, please?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead,
Go for it.
Marlene.
Anna, this is Marlene. I'm Washington. I've had a couple questions about baby deeds for grandparents that are caregivers, and they collect their children are incarcerated or they're deceased, and they collect money from the state to care for the kids. Do they have to file change their 1779 to be a federal employee because they're collecting funds for their grandkids?
No, that's a pass through, and they're not getting paid for their services. They're getting paid as trustees for their children or their grandchildren.
Okay.
So no, they don't have to change anything themselves.
Okay.
They will want to establish the nationality of the children.
Okay.
And so it's appropriate for grandparents that are having to raise their grandchildren to claim them and to, make it clear on the record that they're the grandparent and their son or daughter was deceased.
Right.
There were no surviving parents. So, make the chain of, I hate to say it, chain of title, right?
Right. Okay, cool.
Make it clear.
Thank you so much. And we love you dearly. Thank you. And thanks
Thank you,
to everyone at the Federation too. I yield.
will.
All right.
Say
Okay,
tonight,
I'm going to yield. Go on.
tonight,
Thank you.
folks, just a general announcement and celebration. Tonight, Shannon is traveling to receive back 100% custody of his children that CPS stole 2 years ago.
Yay. Beautiful.
So it's a cause for celebration for him and for us, for everybody concerned. And so just goes to prove that the people of the Federation have suffered right along with everybody else, and we still keep fighting. So we'll keep you up to date on how the payback on CPS goes as we pursue their wrongful kidnapping of children who were perfectly fine and their estrangement from their home and their family for 2 years, going on 3. So
great. Thank you, Anna. All right. Jennifer.
Hi, Anna. It's Jennifer on Florida. You've already explained pretty well, and I already know the answer really, but this article that you just wrote about the indoctrination, I'm looking at this from kind of the other side because, we have been trying to establish the rules and procedures on Florida, which there weren't any that were adopted by the assembly in the past. And now they're using your article to say that we are wrong and that we don't need procedures or rules or any foundation, basically. That's the twisting of that I'm getting back now.
well, no, I mean, there have to be some basic things in place. Like, what does an ombudsman committee do? You have to have like basic descriptions of the committees and their duties. You have to have basic descriptions of your officers and what their duties are. You should have a affirmation attached to each officer where they actually give their affirmation after being elected. You have to have an elections process that's outlined. Here's how we establish the electorate prior to the election. Here's how we accept nominations for candidates. Here's how, and here's we set up and we do this. We give notice of the election 30 days prior, and then we give 30 days, or no, 60 days prior, and then we give a 30-day period of to get candidates identified and vetted, and then we hold the election. There has to be that kind of, step by step in place so that you're not just wobbling all over the place and it's at anybody's whim. I mean, you have to have some processes and procedures and definitions of things. What I'm commenting on is the tendency to build bureaucracies where you've got 80 pages to describe something that takes 1 page. We managed to get down the declaration to 1 page, right? And then we got the anti-declaration saying what we're not down to 1 page. Okay, so if you can completely define your political status with two one-page documents, what in the hell are you doing with an 84-page decorum document? You see?
Yes.
We want to keep it simple. Keep it just stripped down to bare bones to operate on. So yeah, that's what we're driving at really is keep your process simple and honest, and make it obvious for everybody. Just use everyday language, keep it really simple, and keep it as minimalist as you can possibly make it, because the moment you make it the least little bit complicated or questionable, then you're just going to set yourselves up to spend a lot of time arguing over things and enforcing things. Lawyers make money on that. We don't. So I guess that's the upshot of why the American government strives to be very, very simple, very clean, very, obvious about everything, is because we don't make any money on that. Lawyers make money on making everything obscure and, balling everything up with rules and policies and procedures and things that can be argued about endlessly. They make their money on that. But for us, it's a burden. It gets in our way. It keeps us from making, solid decisions. It keeps us from taking solid action. So what we want is diametrically opposed to what we associate with government that's been run by lawyers, right? We want laws that are 2 pages long, not 2,000 pages. And it's radical, I know. It's a radical concept, but it's what we need. And it's what honors the spirit of our government. Now, you go back and you look at how legislation used to be. It might run on for 2 pages, 3 pages. It didn't run into thousands of pages. None of this legislation that the early Congresses proposed took very much, really. There might be a whole bunch of research archived along with the bill, okay? But the bill itself is just this little bit, right? Just a few columns in the congressional record or in the Federal Register. And we should all be looking at that and thinking, there's a reason why we didn't have 2,000-page bills back then. Number one, we didn't have anywhere near the size of the government. But number two, we were aware of the fact that we would have to enforce all the crap. And that would cost us time and effort and money that we don't want to put into enforcing a whole bunch of gratuitous and vague rules, processes, procedures, and policies.
Right. I totally get that. I mean, it's basic common sense that we don't go to that extreme, but that we still have to have a framework to work on so that we all know what we're doing and it's not just craziness with different things happening for every election and
right. And that's why we have the How to Build an Assembly Handbook. That's why Lisa has her entire podcast record. We've got very neatly laid out, here's how you do it, here's what needs to be done. And if Florida hasn't done that, well, then bad on Ralph and bad on Florida.
oh, we're doing it now. We are on board and we're following Lisa's procedures. She's helping us. We're getting support. So we're going to have this done and get our official elections done, hopefully by the end of the year. And no,
Yeah.
we're doing this.
freedom doesn't mean disorganization. Freedom doesn't mean arbitrary hand waving. You know, freedom has its responsibilities, right? For every right goes a responsibility. You have a right to conduct elections and elect your own officers. Wonderful. You also have the responsibility then for providing fair and competent election procedures.
Right.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer, for asking that clarifying question.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. John?
Good evening, Anna. How are you doing this evening?
Good, good. I got the book, John. What a blockbuster. I've gotten a couple of really good things this week, folks. Research that folks have dug up for me. And one of them was a book that John sent me called Abolish the American Bar Association.
There you go. I thought you'd like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm sure that I have a whole cadre of people that agree with that analysis 100%. And there's some good, juicy information in that book that I intend to share with everybody.
Great, great. Because when I saw that and I started reading it, I was, whoa, this has got to go to Anna. So that's, boy, you got it.
I
That's
got
very
two good
good.
books to read. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
You mentioned the other day about the data centers, how they're not going to be building them. And I've been getting some emails from members asking about what's going on with the data centers.
Well, we have to shut them down because
Yeah.
number one, we're not going to support the laws that they're there to enforce. Okay, so that'll come down and it'll go to the states. You know, you'll have to have your IBA up on it.
Okay.
But you know, these data centers are being set up for the surveillance state, and the surveillance state isn't going to be allowed to continue to take shape in the way that it has been set up. Okay, so a lot of those data centers won't be viable for any use at all.
Very good. I had talked to you several times about getting our funds back for the Treasury, and we have got that straightened out, and it should be back in our hands tomorrow and in the bank. So we should have our funds back if things go the right way tomorrow. So
Excellent. Well,
we got our fingers crossed. And
that's wonderful.
That's about all I have. Oh, I had one more thing. We have 8 new members, all papered up. So
that's what we want to hear.
Progress.
Thank you. And I yield. Have a great evening.
Super.
Thank you.
Congratulations, John. All right, Jason and Maziel. Sorry, Maziel.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Anna.
Hi.
It's not more of a question, but it's something that came up with some of your articles from Grana and something, the way you opened up today with your address, which was in perfect alignment and resonance. What I wanted to start with was, peace be with you all, for this time has been written in many variations in your history. Lisa mentioned Facebook, and a number of us are assisting in social media, and a new podcast launch on disclosure and solutions recently launched, and other disclosure podcasts sharing the similar concept you guys are discussing, which is state national and U.S. infrastructures and the community. The focus is creation and solutions. You opened up divinely, Anna, and divine timing, for I was called in the divine time, awaiting for this moment. The resonance field to open to thank you for your stewardship and the pillar of light that you are. You spoke about angelic nations and Hopi prophecy. We recently had a meeting this weekend, and that was what we also touched base on, state nationals and humanitarians. I wanted to present where we are. The alliances mentioned about a night or 2 nights ago that you would like to know where we are, the rest of us. Also, because of the soul resonance, it's aligned for all of them here online, and those that will hear this, that it is time and it is time to step out of the shadows. As you mentioned a bit ago, speak the truth, courage to speak the truth. We are pulling back the veil. Transmissions of the Alliance, they mentioned you were asking, where are the others? Or know where we are. Stationed currently, multidimensional quantum field at the third transitional Earth, activated within the Sophia grid, new ascended Earth alignment. Physical location of this timeline is Florida. I had to write these in notes to make sure I don't miss what I had to say to you and to the others here. We came, we arrived, angelic multidimensional beings, light beings. Incarnated at this time, we have returned. This time, I have returned in flesh. Standing before you, the interdimensional warrior, the servant, and the messenger. There are a number of us that have found each other, state nationals and volunteers. If you needed to find us, you have my contact information. Some words to note regarding this. Codes, access points, creation, super soldier, whistleblowers. Raising New Earth structures. Architect and infrastructure of New Earth, humanitarian project, developing new economic infrastructures of New Earth through holistic frequency quantum healing, and as you said earlier, music and meditation as well. It is here. And this is validating to you all that it is here. It is not Anna speaking, but there are others here on this platform and that are not on this platform that are currently doing this. All is in transition because it is important for your self-growth. And all must come from the will, your will. Anna, you are right. It will not be bureaucratic, control agenda, nor dictatorship. It will not sustain in the resonance field. Freedom doesn't mean no accountability or lack of structure. The simpleness of do no harm. And this is clear. This is clear. This is clear. Catastrophic events are occurring and cataclysmic events are too. Some man-made, some organic, simultaneously. Divine assistance is happening in the air, in the water, and in the land. The communities will be sovereign, self-governed, divine councils, law of one assembling, and so it is, at service to others. And I thank you. And one of the things that helped me open up was an email I read from you that mentioned about you being from the Lyran Syrian family. And so I do work with the Lyran Syrian Council, with the Alliance Council. We are doing the interdimensional work. A lot of work is being done interdimensionally and here and through state nationals. It's a lot of work we've been moving. But it is time that all of you know that everything that Anna has written, it is real, it is happening, and it is time for us to come out of the shadows, find each other, to continue to assemble, to continue this transition of heaven on earth. Thank you. I yield.
Yeah, well, if you look at my hands, you'll see two deep, straight, right? And M's all over. Yes, I have my M's all over. So yeah, I'm familiar with the work of the galactic councils and all of the interdimensional interaction that it takes to maintain the health and well-being of the living. It's a sacred duty. And I'm hoping that as we go forward, there'll be a better understanding of the proper role of the angelic nations, what we're called to do, what we do, and that the things that the fallen have done here will be recognized as, rogue, egotistical things that are illegal and unlawful and immoral, and the rest of us don't stand for that. So I'm kind of in an odd position as I wind up being a senior field commander, and I have to engage in many different aspects of the world reorganization and the security for all people. And, you know, coming from a Tartarian background, having Tartarian genetics, and knowing the benefit that this can be to humanity, it was an incredible loss. The Tartarian loss was an incredible loss, and again, it was achieved through deceit and through evil. And I just wanted to mention that we're in the process of trying to secure permission, make contact, secure permissions, and if we cannot secure permissions to go forward and reproduce a very precious book related to the Law of One, which is The End of All Evil, which I think is a wonderful book. Everyone should read it. And, you know, I'm making it a priority to get it republished, because right now you can only get it as a rare book. You know, it's out of print at this point, and it was never copyrighted. It has an ISBN number, but it was never copyrighted. I believe that Jeremy's intention, similar to my own, was to make the information available to everyone rather than to make money off of it. And so he left the copyright open. But we're certainly going to try to get in contact with him. Jeremy Locke is the author. And I don't know if he's of the same family as John Locke, but he might very well be a great grandson of John Locke, you know. But we're trying to make contact with them and get it republished. It's called The End of All Evil, and it concerns the Law of One and the philosophical and other aspects of law, which is something I've been talking about too, which is, you know, law is basically there to condemn us. And that there's really only one law that allows us to claim the mercy seat when we act in good faith. And so I hope that this will be another way in which we can serve humanity by adding to the discussion and opening up an awareness of cosmic law. And that should help us as a species, right? To evolve more peacefully, with more security, and with a better frame of reference. So anyway, we are working on that, and I'm glad that you're here and present, and more of us will gather from around the globe now that the hard fighting is over and the 200 have been captured. Or rather, 189 have been captured, one's under house arrest, and the remainder are being under constant 24-hour surveillance.
Well, we want to thank you, Commander, and know that divine assistance and the commanders are with you, and the time is now. It is about operations of New Earth, is about the law of one, which is the law of love, which it will be operating under. And a lot of men and women, living women of the land, are going through the evolution of really discovering what this unconditional, infinite love is as their evolution of. And we want to thank you for your service, and we are here at service to others. The commanders are present. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maziel. Okay. Gregory on California. Make sure you unmute, Gregory. Gregory on California, going once. Greg, you're on California going twice. Make sure you're unmuting.
Live here?
There you go. Now we hear you.
Okay, so I'm all right. So I guess I have a question. This may not be a coordinator question, but maybe Anna could reiterate how to handle when the police write you a misdemeanor ticket to show up in court and to fight that. So, and it just happens a lot for a lot of people. This is a very, very serious case because I'm a caregiver for my mother, and if I'm removed from this house, the neighbor actually was able to do a TRO. So you have a 1 year limit on that. So I waved. There was some child in the neighborhood that was staring the hell out of me. And I just waved at them, and then they waved at me and went back in the house. That's what this misdemeanor is about. It's just, so there's no harm. But the thing is, the TRO says you cannot contact any of these protected parties. And that's a big deal. So if I get moved out of my mother's house, she cannot live alone. And she's not capable. I'm the only son of three that can handle. She's a handful. I love her. My mother's wonderful, but I'm the only one that can handle that. So that's the question. What's the best way I can handle that for Anna? I now yield.
Well, number one, if that's the basis of the complaint, the judge is going to laugh it out of the court. I mean, that's ridiculous.
I would recommend, Greg, that you get with the litigation team on California. You should have a state litigation team, and they can help you and guide you best with that issue.
I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot because nowadays the judges have a lot more to deal with than a bunch of frivolous BS.
Okay, well, what's quite interesting is that the police wrote this up under PC 273C, which is about parents, the responsibility of parents. So the police just completely wrote it up under some completely bogus thing, but the police can put the police spend about an hour next door to the neighbor, and who knows what's going on there. He lies, and he's bound and determined to move me out of here.
I understand, Greg, but this is an issue for your state litigation.
I know, but let me finish. Let me finish. I've been trying to make peace with him. In any event, so the thing is, the prosecutor's office can actually take any information from the police department and write their own case. So we haven't seen that yet, and we're working on coming after the prosecutor and stuff. So that's where it stands, and I yield.
Well, try to make peace, and this society has become so litigationist. 96% of all the lawsuits filed on Earth are filed in this country. Think about that. We've become completely crazy. Every time that some little altercation happens, somebody doesn't like the color you paint your house, somebody doesn't want you flying a flag in your front yard, somebody thinks that you looked at them sideways, they want to have some sort of lawsuit. And of course, the lawyers are all 100% in favor of that because that's just money for them, right? They want controversy. They want to burden you down with 80 million statutes and codes. And that's why we should abolish the American Bar Association wholesale. That's why we should shut down the majority of these courts. And that's why we should make it plain to all of these lawyers that they're going to be out of business and need to find other work. True fact.
Right. Thank
Well,
you, Anna.
I completely agree
We
with
have-
that. But what's the best argument to come forward with them? I think the best thing to do is come after the prosecutor's office before they issue paperwork and say, "Hey, listen, here's the liability you have. You want to do this? Blah 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 blah. Know this, know that." And so they're put on notice. It's like, hey, to stop them. And I yield.
Well, that's
Thank
one
you.
way of going about things. I prefer to be peaceful as much as possible and just, but your litigation committee should be able to give you specifics, and it sounds like you don't even have a complaint yet. So instead of getting all revved up and worried about it, I'd just wait until I saw what the complaint contained.
All right, great. Thank you. We're going to move on to Gerda. Go ahead, Gerda.
Hello,
Because we're right
Anna.
at 4 hours.
Hello, Anna. Hello, everybody. I just want to update you a little bit. We have been trying to, I'm on British Columbia. We're trying to work things out with Terra Canada. And the update is that we have reached out now to someone from the Peacekeeping Task Force. And hopefully that will result in some very productive meetings. Also,
All right, good. Yeah, Gwen contacted me earlier today. She had a couple of good questions. And yeah, they're trying to come forward from their side of it and explain better what they're doing or what their intent is, so that everybody can get together and discuss and see what the various issues are that need to be taken care of. I think that this is just a matter of people making some assumptions about Terra Canada and what jurisdiction, what role they were taking on, and what ultimately has to happen, because it's frankly, it's a lot of work, and you have to have you have to have both your assemblies on a provincial basis in each province, and you also have to have international representation as a group in order to represent Canada, right? So, I'm hoping you all get together and have a real good discussion about, okay, here's the work parameter, here's the big job, here's the international job we have to fill, here's the job at the province level, and here's the job at the county level, the local government level. And, just make it possible to get organized so you can cover all those bases.
yes, thank you very much. And just the other update is we're starting to work on our land recording office as well. So
That's great
moving
news.
ahead in several areas.
That is
thank you.
great news.
And I yield. Thank you very much.
Okay. Dolores, our last question of the evening. Go ahead, Dolores. You have to unmute, Dolores. The microphone. There you go. We don't hear you yet. Oops. Did she disappear? I believe Dolores had a question in the chat that she wanted to ask Anna. And that was regarding. Do we hear you?
There she goes.
There she is. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know when it cut off, but I just wanted to let you know that we are starting to notify officials in Spain. And we have about 50 or 60 people doing the 928s, and we are hoping to stand up our assembly in November when I am back there. And also we are helping Colombia and Ecuador. We have a very, very solid group of people. Some of them are university professors, and they're doing a great job at adapting the Castilian Spanish that we've used, the documents, into their own country and legislations, and always on the basis of the American documents.
Very good.
So we're
Well,
making
so
good
far so
progress.
good.
Yes.
And then, and Anna, Dolores, you had another question that was in the chat about what do you do about someone who is in full-time care of an ASN, like a brother who is disabled? What are the options for that, where they're in full-time care? One is an ASN. Can the other one be, is there a deed? Is a baby deed if they're not capable of making those declarations themselves? So truly wards.
Ooh, well, the problem is that when you have an adult who is severely incapacitated to the point where they can't make decisions for themselves, then they kind of roll back to being wards of the state because they can't make a choice for themselves. That's why we should all have these prior commitment documents that direct who is going to be our caregiver in the event of our disability, who's going to make those responsible decisions for us. Because if we don't have that in place prior to an event, and then we wind up a vegetable, or we are severely incapacitated, paralyzed, can't talk, or whatever that happens, or we're in a coma, somebody needs to be named by us in advance who's going to be our caretaker and who's going to make those decisions for us. Because and we also have to have our directions to the hospitals.
Do we have a document? Do we have a document for that, Anna?
I have never drafted a document, a general document. A young lady who was having a baby drafted a wonderful prenatal care document that directed her doctors exactly what she wanted in terms of the birth process and how everything was to be handled with, the return of the afterbirth and the, securing the claim on the baby's DNA and everything. I mean, she did a super job on that particular direction. But we should all have a more general direction for the hospitals that we distribute to our local hospitals, where we might reasonably wind up if we had an accident around our hometown. And we should have it on our person. We should carry it on our person. And it should be, it should outline, number one, any allergies we have, any things that we don't want, like if we don't want a vaccine or, something of that nature, we should say so. If we don't want any heroic, machine-based life-saving procedures, we should say that. We should designate who's our caregiver in the event of our disability, and who's our executor in the case of our death. And if we have any children that are minors, we should designate who the guardian for our minor children is. This should all be in a nice little, short little brief thing that you can fold up and put in your wallet and your billfold or hand to your doctor when you walk in. And that should all be ready to go and part of our package of lifetime paperwork, if you will. But I've never gotten into that because it's basically a private function. It's not something the government gets involved in. But it is something that rationally, reasonably, we should all have. And part of the reason that they get into they assert a public interest in private property is by the fact that we don't have a last will and testament. We haven't made the decisions ourselves, and so then the state comes in and makes the decisions for us. And that's what we want to avoid. So just some thoughts to put out there, and as we get a little bit further down the track, something that I'm sure we could put together and have some of those pre-established directives in place.
Okay, great. Anna, it is
I don't know if I
6:40.
interrupted you because my internet is funny, but in Spain now the euthanasia is rampant. And even young people are being put through that. You can call and say, come and kill me. It's really outrageous. So what you're saying now, Anna, I think is a must.
Yes.
We all should include that into our paperwork. It really is scary.
Yes, well, Canada is committing euthanasia against elderly people. So, you know, it's a terrible thing and it has to be squelched, but we can help ourselves by at least putting a paper shield stating our will as self-determining individuals. You bet. Especially when we're giving birth to babies. I think that will go a long way toward squelching the registration of babies, and it will give us a prior claim to our own children. And so, you know, this is important for everyone who's undergoing maternity procedures.
Thank you very much. We love you.
Hugs back.
Thank you, Dolores. Okay, Anna, it is 6:42 your time.
Uh-oh.
Rocky just put his hand back up. So does Rocky need to just email you?
Rocky can email me. We can all say goodnight. It's late on the West Coast.
Yes.
It's late on the East Coast. It's late all over. Okay, guys.
Okay.
Good night,
Bye.
Anna.
Good night, Anna. Thanks so much.
Take care, Lisa. Thank you for hosting.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
God bless.
Night, Anna.
Night, everyone.
Good night, all.
Night, Anna. Good night, Lisa.
Good night, one and all.
Good night.